पुलिस ऑफिसर होने के नाते उनके पास ये पावर थी कि वो पुलिस के सायरन को इस्तेमाल करते हुए अपने लिए खुला रास्ता बना सकें। लेकिन उन्होंने इसका इस्तेमाल किया उस उद्देश्य के लिए कि एक जो लड़की है उसका 1 वर्ष खराब ना हो जाए, तो उसको उन्होंने समय रहते उसके परीक्षा केंद्र तक पहुँचा दिया। वो ये भी कर सकते थे, ये सॉल्यूशन भी या ये सलाह भी दे सकते थे कि ठीक है, आप जो यहाँ के अधीक्षक हैं, परीक्षा अधीक्षक हैं, उनसे संपर्क करिए, लेकिन वो सुने ना सुने, क्या कर सकते हैं, क्या नहीं कर सकते हैं। तो उन्होंने उनके पास 5-6 मिनट का समय था, तो उन्होंने तुरंत से उसको अपने मोटरसाइकिल पर बिठाया और बिठा कर के सायरन के माध्यम से रास्ते को सेफ बनाते हुए तुरंत से एग्ज़ाम सेंटर पहुँच गए, जहाँ जो बालिका थी वो बड़ी सुविधा से परीक्षा दे सकी। तो ये एक एक पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड, एक स्ट्रेस मैनेजमेंट, बल्कि ये टाइम मैनेजमेंट का भी उदाहरण है। क्योंकि अगर वो कहते हैं कि ठीक है, आप वेट कीजिए, कुछ करेंगे, तो ये समय, किस समय का सदुपयोग कैसे करना है, ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। तो टाइम मैनेजमेंट मतलब प्रायोरिटी निर्धारित करना कि मुझे पहले क्या काम करना है। गोल्स आपके पास हैं, प्रायोरिटीज़ आपके पास हैं, पॉसिबिलिटीज़, संभावनाएँ आपके पास हैं, तो उन संभावनाओं पर गौर कीजिए, उन प्रायोरिटीज़ पे गौर कीजिए और फिर आप तय कीजिए कि पहले क्या करना है, किस पर कितना समय देना है, किस पर कम समय देना है, किस पर दिक्कतें आ सकती हैं, इसलिए उस पर समय खराब ना किया जाए। तो ये सारी चीज़ें आपके जो समय का प्रबंधन है उसके बारे में, और किसी समस्या को हम कैसे सुलझा सकते हैं, यानी उसका एक सकारात्मक हल कैसे निकाल सकते हैं, इसके लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि ये जो हमारा ब्लॉक 2 का लास्ट का अंतिम यूनिट था, उस पर हमने बात की। तो इस पर बहुत महत्वपूर्ण एस्पेक्ट ये था कि जो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग टेक्निक्स हैं, उन पे हम बात करें, और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग टेक्निक्स में स्ट्रेस मैनेजमेंट, प्रॉब्लम्स को सुनना, उनके संभावित हल को सजेस्ट करना। हम अपने छात्रों को इस तरह से ओरिएंट करें कि वे अपनी जो समस्याएं हैं उनके बारे में अधिकारियों से बात करें, लेकिन ये समझ के बात करें, ये कोशिश करें कि बहुत सारी जो समस्याएं हैं, बहुत सारी जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, उनके हल उन्हीं सर्कमस्टांसेस, सिचुएशंस में हैं। सो कॉज एंड इफेक्ट थ्योरी, thinking logically, thinking scientifically, having a perception about a problem, positive attitude, तो ये सारी चीज़ें मैटर करेंगी। तो हमारा जो लर्नर है, जो स्टूडेंट है, डिस्टेंस लर्नर है, उसमें ये सारी जो योग्यताएं हैं, ये नहीं हो सकती, बिल्कुल बहुत संभव है। तो और डिस्टेंस लर्नर जो है वो आइसोलेटेड है, एट ए डिस्टेंस है, तो जाहिर तौर पर उसकी दिक्कतें होंगी, समस्याएं होंगी, उसके मन में सवाल होंगे। तो जो टीचर है, जो काउंसलर है, उसको उन सवालों को सुनना चाहिए और फिर उस छात्र शिक्षार्थी को ये बताना चाहिए कि इनमें से बहुत सारे जो समाधान हैं वो उसके अपने परिवेश में उपलब्ध हैं। इसमें बड़ी अच्छी एक सलाह दी गई कि लर्न फ्रॉम द इम्पेरिकल सॉल्यूशंस। हमारे अपने जीवनचर्या के आस के जो जो उसका परिक्षेत्र है, जो जिस दायरे में रह के हम जीवन जीते हैं, हमारी समस्याओं के समाधान भी उसी में है। तो ये सोच कर के जो छात्र है उसे धैर्यपूर्वक, बिना किसी उद्वेग के, बिना किसी संवेग के अपनी समस्या को एक तरह से वस्तुपरकता की दृष्टि से देखना चाहिए, और फिर जहाँ तक संभव होगा उसका समाधान उसके परिवेश में मिलेगा, बस उसे पकड़ने की ज़रूरत है। इसको लेकर के अपने स्वास्थ्य पर दुष्प्रभाव पड़े, मानसिक उद्विग्नता हो, ये कदापि नहीं होना चाहिए। लेकिन फिर भी अगर किसी परिस्थिति में ऐसा हो जाता है, तो जैसा मैंने एक पुलिस अधिकारी का उत्तर दिया कि कैसे एक बालिका का न केवल उन्होंने 1 वर्ष बर्बाद होने से बचा लिया, बल्कि उस बालिका की जो उद्विग्नता थी, जो मानसिक दबाव उस पर था, उसको भी उन्होंने उसका निदान करते हुए उसकी परीक्षा का प्रबंध कर दिया। तो ये एक बड़ा अच्छा उदाहरण है। तो हम चलेंगे अब ब्लॉक 3 पर। और ब्लॉक 3 MDE 413 का है काउंसलिंग एंड ट्यूटरिंग। हम शुरू से ही बात करते रहे हैं कि डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन, ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन का एक जो महत्वपूर्ण कंपोनेंट है, वो है ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन में काउंसलिंग का कंपोनेंट और ट्यूटरिंग का कंपोनेंट। ये जो काउंसलिंग का कंपोनेंट है, ये डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन का पार्ट नहीं है, ना ही ये कॉरस्पॉन्डेंस एजुकेशन का हिस्सा है। तो ओपन एजुकेशन में हम क्या करते हैं, जहाँ ओपन और डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन में जहाँ छात्र हमारे से दूरी पर हैं, तो हम उनसे एक रूबरू होने के लिए, फेस टू फेस संपर्क करने के लिए, व्यक्तिगत रूप से उनसे मिलने के लिए कुछ काउंसलिंग के जो सत्र हैं, परामर्श सत्रों का आयोजन किया जाता है। और उन परामर्श सत्रों में हम शुरू से बात कर रहे हैं कि काउंसलिंग डज नॉट मीन टीचिंग, इट इज़ नॉट लाइक क्लासरूम टीचिंग, इट डजंट गेट ट्रांजेक्टेड दैट वे। क्लासरूम में पूरे के पूरे टेक्स्ट को हम ये एक तरह से डील करते हैं, एक तरह से उस पर चर्चा करते हैं और कोशिश करते हैं कि पूरे के पूरे टेक्स्ट या पार्ट को पढ़ाया जाए। लेकिन ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस जो प्रणाली है, मुक्त एवं दूर शिक्षा जो प्रणाली है, उसमें इस तरह से पढ़ाना संभव नहीं है, क्योंकि छात्र को हम, शिक्षार्थी को हम पूरे वर्ष भर अपने पास नहीं बुला सकते। छात्र जो है वो ऑटोनोमस है, स्वतंत्र है, इंडिविजुअल है, वो इंडिपेंडेंट लर्निंग करना चाहता है, वो एक फ्री एजेंट है, उसके अपनी प्राथमिकताएं हैं, उसका अपना काम है, और ना जाने कितने ऐसे उसके पक्ष हैं कि हम उसको पूरे दिन, पूरे सत्र भर उसको अपने पास नहीं बुला सकते। तो फिर क्या किया जाए? तो उसके लिए कुछ सत्रों का आयोजन किया जाता है, जो कि प्रोग्राम का लोड कितना है, क्रेडिट कितने हैं, उसके आधार पर एक 4 क्रेडिट के लिए, 6 क्रेडिट के, 8 क्रेडिट के जो कोर्स हैं, उनके लिए ये निर्णय लिया जाता है कि इसके लिए कुछ दिनों की जो काउंसलिंग है वो कराई जाए, ताकि उन काउंसलिंग के दिनों में छात्र अपने अध्ययन सामग्री का अध्ययन करके आएगा। और फिर जो काउंसलर है, परामर्शदाता, जो अक्सर विश्वविद्यालय उन लोगों में से चयन करते हैं जो या तो किसी विश्वविद्यालय, महाविद्यालय में अध्यापन के में कार्यरत हों और विषय के विशेषज्ञ हों, और भी एक तरह से दूर शिक्षा में ठीक तरीके से ओरिएंटेड हों, यानी जो दूर शिक्षा पद्धति है उससे वाकिफ़ हों। तो सबसे पहले आइए हम बात करेंगे काउंसलिंग। काउंसलिंग क्या है? तो काउंसलिंग बेसिकली परामर्श देना है। इट इज़ ए परामर्श। तो हम परामर्श किससे लेते हैं? आम तौर पर हम किससे परामर्श लेते हैं? किसी बुज़ुर्ग से, किसी अनुभवी व्यक्ति से, या कभी-कभी हम डॉक्टर से भी कंसल्टेशन कर लेते हैं। तो किस लिए हम करते हैं? अगर डॉक्टर के पास जाने की कोशिश करें या जाने की बात है, तो हमारा स्वास्थ्य संबंधी कोई मुद्दा रहा होगा। इसी प्रकार अगर पढ़ाई से संबंधित कोई मुद्दा है, तो हम अक्सर अपने अध्यापक के पास जाना चाहेंगे। तो अध्यापक के पास हम क्या लेके जाते हैं? हम प्रवेश की प्रक्रिया के बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं, मेरे अंक अच्छे नहीं आए इस बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं, मैं अपना जो थीसिस है वो कैसे लिखूँ, इस बात पे बात करना चाहते हैं, या फिर मुझे पढ़ने में रुचि नहीं आ रही है, इस बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं। तो इस तरह के ढेरों सवाल जो शिक्षार्थी है उसके मन में होते हैं, जिनको लेकर के वह अध्यापक के पास जाना चाहता है, और अध्यापक से चाहता है कि वह उसकी बात को सुने और उसके लिए कोई समाधान या सॉल्यूशन बताए। तो आइए सबसे पहले जानते हैं व्हाट इज़ काउंसलिंग। काउंसलिंग क्या है? परामर्श क्या है? डॉक्टर क्या करता है? एक इंजीनियर के पास हम जाते हैं कि भाई मेरा जो हीटर है वो काम नहीं कर रहा है, एयर कंडीशनर काम नहीं कर रहा है। तो वो क्या करता है, उस प्रॉब्लम को डायग्नोस करता है और डायग्नोस करने के बाद बताता है कि भाई इसकी जो तारें हैं वो जल गई हैं, आपको इन्हें बदलवाना पड़ेगा। इसी तरह जब आप किसी अध्यापक के पास जाते हैं और वो आप उनसे कहते हैं कि मेरा पढ़ाई में मन नहीं लग रहा है, ये बातें मुझे समझ नहीं आ रही हैं, तो वो दो चीज़ें करता है, एक इन्फॉर्म और एक एडवाइस। अगर आप ये समस्या लेके अध्यापक के पास गए हैं कि मेरी परीक्षाओं का जो परिणाम है वो अभी नहीं आया है, विलम्ब हो रहा है, क्यों नहीं आया, तो अध्यापक आपको बताएगा कि देखिए अभी तक जो मूल्यांकन है वो पूरा नहीं हुआ और पूरा होते ही आपके जो अंक हैं, ग्रेड कार्ड हैं, वो इंटरनेट पर रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाएंगे, प्रदर्शित हो जाएंगे, प्रकाशित हो जाएंगे। तो ये एक तरह का इंफॉर्मेशन है कि यस, इस बात के बारे में ये स्पष्ट व्यवस्था है और इस व्यवस्था से हो सकता है कि छात्र परिचित ना हो, तो छात्र को ऐसा रुझान बनाना चाहिए और अध्यापक का ऐसा रोल होना चाहिए, उसकी ऐसी भूमिका होनी चाहिए कि वह उसको सही सही सूचना दे सके। यहाँ मैं ये बताना चाहूँगा कि अक्सर हमने देखा है कि काउंसलर्स जो हैं वो जो पाठ है, जो सब्जेक्ट के कंटेंट है, विषय वस्तु है, उसके संबंधित तो पूरी सूचना उनके पास होती है, लेकिन कभी-कभी छात्र, खास तौर पे दूर शिक्षा में जो छात्र है, उसके प्रवेश संबंधी पक्षों पर उनके पास सूचना का अभाव रहता है। तो अच्छा ये होगा कि ऐसी परिस्थिति में यदि उनके पास सूचना नहीं है, तो वे जिस केंद्र से छात्र संबंधित है, उसके कोऑर्डिनेटर या समन्वयक के पास उन छात्रों को भेजें, ताकि जो शिक्षार्थी हैं, उन्हें सही-सही सूचना और जानकारी मिल सके, इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल सके। ये तो हुआ जहाँ तक सूचना का संबंध है, लेकिन अगर काउंसलिंग में कोई ऐसी समस्या लेके छात्र जो अध्यापक है उसके पास आता है, पूछता है कि मैं कैसे ठीक से पढूँ? मैं कैसे अपना अध्ययन ठीक से करूँ? प्रश्नों के उत्तर मैं कैसे दूँ? तो ये सूचनात्मक प्रश्न नहीं है, ये प्रश्न हैं परामर्श के, एडवाइस के, सलाह के। तो अध्यापक उनको बताएगा कि भाई देखिए, पहले सरल से क्लिष्ट की तरफ जाइए, कुछ सहयोग कीजिए, सहयोग लीजिए और अगर हो सके तो आप उन विषयों को पहले, उन चैप्टर्स को, उन अध्यायों को पहले पढ़ें जो आपको आसान लगते हैं और जो कठिन है उसको उसके बाद पढ़ें। तो इस तरह क्या होगा कि विषय के प्रति आपकी रुचि बनेगी और रुचि बनने पर जो है यू विल ऑटोमेटिकली मूव टू द कॉम्प्लेक्स इश्यूज, कॉम्प्लेक्स टॉपिक्स. So from easy to complex is the suggested strategy to be advised to the distance learners when they feel that the study material is quite tough and difficult. So at that point of time, they should be told to study those chapters, those issues first, which they might have studied previously, not in, of course, very detail, but at least they will be acquainted with those issues. Third is counseling. So counseling is basically counseling, informing, and advising. So what counseling is something like priest. You go to the priest, you empathize with the person who comes with the grievance or with the remorse. Somebody wants to admit, yes, I have done this. Now I want to accept it and may God forgive me. What is the role of the counselor there? Counselor's role there is to accept it and then, take it confidentially. This is very important. For example, if a student comes to the counselor and says, Sir, I'm not able to find answers to these queries. Those queries might be very, very ordinary and simple. So the counselor should not go on speaking loudly. Hey, you are not able to answer even these simple questions. What will you do in life? This, that, and so forth. That is not counseling. So counseling is to empathize. That means to appreciate the issue raised by the learner and then make effort to address that. And then you can say, yes, these are very simple solutions. What you do, you go to the very simple one first and practice there for some time, and eventually you will mature into it and then find the answers to the difficult or the complex issues. So it is like that. So counseling is basically informing, advising, and counseling. So informing is to give correct information about the different activities or the different aspects of study. Advice is to deal with the academic matter of the learner, and counseling is basically to empathize. That means to show sympathy, become empathetic with the problem of the learner. But it is very important that here the confidence is maintained. Learner, the learner is not left in the lurch, and one should not go into announcing in the public that yes, so and so has this kind of weakness and like that. So it is always to maintain the confidentiality of the learner. If we move little ahead, then we're talking about counseling. There are several theories of counseling. But the very important aspect is to, first of all, it is very important to determine uh, why counseling is needed and who needs the counseling. So we all know the distance learners are basically at a distance. They are separated from the study center, from the teacher. So they will always be in need of, in search of information. Once you supply them the correct information, you fulfill the role of information, then the learner will be in peace. So, first of all, we know who needs the counseling. Definitely, it is the learner who requires the counseling. So, counseling, because it is information, so sometimes the learner requires to know about the different schedule of different activities. Then that becomes the informational counseling. The learner needs some help in dealing with the contents of particular unit, particular block, particular course. There, if the teacher helps the learner and advise as to what to do, how to go about it, what areas should be focused, what should be studied more, and what complementary or supplementary studies can help the learner to to deal with the problem that is there with regard to contents. So that means there is a supplemental material advising, which is a form of counseling. So most common topics which are raised in the counseling sessions, those are two types, three types. The very first one is that relates to the institution. That relates to the institution. What is relating to the institution? Somebody says, okay, if whether the institution is recognized, approved, one, whether the institution has centers nearby me, whether institution will take responsibility for my employment, and so forth. The other type of issues that are raised in the counseling, those are course or the career related. So if those are course related, then we all know that if the course is difficult, course is simple, course is easy. If it is complex, and if it has a practical component, how to do it, when to do it, who will guide us, and all sorts of questions. And career related issues, so means whether the course is going to be useful in the building, making of a career. So learner has concern all the time that whether after studying this particular course will I be able to have good career in my life or not. So one the learners will most of the time see what contribution this particular education is going to make in their career. Similarly, there are study center issue, study issue. What are the study issue? That is relating to the assignments, assessment, and terminal examinations. So that means they are worried about the assignments. If the assignments will be evaluated in time, will there be feedback? How to deal uh, with the situation if there are no feedback? So there are so many queries about the study. Then there are queries about the examinations. What type of examinations are held, conducted? What are the questions that will be asked in the examination, and so forth. So then there is another issue. So one is about the institution related, another one is the course or career related, third one is study related, fourth one is about the continuity. So continuity means if the learner sometimes feels that this career, this particular course is not going to help me, so whether I should continue with it or I should withdraw from the uh, program or the course. So we know who need the counseling. Counseling is always needed by the distance learners because they have specific or the typical characteristics. So they are at a distance, they are mobile learners, they are very remotely located, and their characteristics are such that put them in a situation whereby a lot of counseling is needed to them. Some learners will simply come to the counseling sessions just to know about how to fill up the examination form. So, but we cannot, determine such students also, those who come with very trivial queries, because they are in a situation where there is nobody to guide them. So they come for the counseling sessions, and it is the duty of the counselor or the coordinator to provide them the correct information about their future, about their career, about what is available at the study center or the region center, and also about the course contents that he or she might be having. So another aspect is when the counseling is needed. Largely, we know the counseling is needed at three stages. One is pre-admission. That means when a learner decides that I will go about pursuing this particular program, but is not very clear about it. So the learner he's not learner. He might not be called learner. A candidate or a student will visit the university and then ask several questions. What are the courses? Where the courses are offered through? Whether the courses are online or offline, and a whole lot of queries. What is the fee structure? Who will teach us the courses? When the classes will be held? Where the classes will be held, and so forth. Then comes the uh, in course or the during course counseling. This particular phase is quite long, and once the learner is enrolled, he she has different area of problems or issues. Now they have content related issues, they have assignment related issues, they have term and examination related issues, and so many other issues, so many other questions they have. So they will come with these such questions. So obviously there has to be a mechanism to address these questions. Then we know it's post completion counseling, that is counseling or information or advice or counseling uh, concerned with the learner's career, learner's future. Learners will like to know when my degree will be issued, or is the institute is going to hold some job mela, job fair, or whether there is a universal recognition of this university, They ask so many questions, that since we have completed our program, how it is going to help us in our future. So there are various types of counseling. It is one-to-one counseling. It is through telephone. It is through radio. It is through television. It is through face-to-face mode. It is through the internet technologies, email, and there are live sessions and lot of types of counseling can be enumerated because it depends upon the needs of the learner and the availability of the counseling facilities at a respective institute. It depends upon the arrangements. Previously, the only effective instrument was telephone. So there used to be a lot of telephone calls. The inquiry section used to have 4 to 5 dedicated telephones just for this purpose. But eventually, the telephone call were taken over by mobile. So now in mobile, we do not call too many people, but we used to send text. Now text has also changed. Now you have emails. Now you have other live media, so you can straight away go into the website of the university or to the counselor's portal and then discuss whatever you want to discuss and receive the feedback or receive the information from the counselor. So there are any number of counseling. Then comes the various forms of counseling. So we know that there are forms of counseling, there are types of counseling, there are counseling which are academic and non-academic. So if the counseling, I mean, if the teacher is teaching, if the teacher is discussing an issue which relates to the contents or the topics of the course, it is definitely going to be a academic counseling. So academic counseling covers the courses, topics, the illustrations, assignments, evaluation, etc. Then there is non-academic counseling. That is counseling about that. I mean, that means counseling is informing, advising, and counseling. So that is there for guiding the learners with regard to fulfillment of terminal examination form. Then fill up a form for early declaration of results and so forth. So all these are administrative matter or non-academic matters or non-academic counseling issues. Then we have sometimes it is very difficult to segregate the two, academic counseling and non-academic counseling, because all the issues overlaps. If the learner has come asking a question from the counselor regarding the contents of the course, he will immediately raise the second question that, sir, when I will fill up the examination form. So in the distance education, it is very difficult to become straight-jacketed in our approach. So one has to be quite flexible and one has to be ready to answer such questions that may not be seemingly very academic nature, but maybe little mixed nature. So there is always overlap. Open and distance learning system is such that here every worker, every member of the open and distance learning system is supposed to having information about the courses, about the operations or the conduct of the courses. That means one has to be basically informed. At least even everybody should be able to tell somebody, yes, prospectus are available at that particular place, at that particular room number, at that particular counter or whatever it is. When we talk about counseling, we have discussed various aspects of counseling, why it is there, how it is conducted, who is asking for counseling, when one asks for counseling, types of counseling, forms of counseling. Now is the time to sum up all these issues, because counseling will be effective when there will be good counselor. So the question is, who is the good counselor? Who can be described a good counselor? We were talking what is counseling. Counseling is informing, advising, and counseling. But who is good counselor? We said counselor is empathizer. That means one who appreciates, shares the concerns of the learner who has been there in the open and distance learning. Because we know our learner is not attached all the time with the teacher. So he has obviously concerns. So what uh, qualities should be there in a counselor? Very first quality in a counselor is the warmth. What is warmth? We know if a learner approaches the counselor, then the counselor is supposed to at least say, yes, I agree, I appreciate what you said, but this is the fact. He should tell the facts. It is not that he should not reveal the facts, but there should be warmth. The teacher can say, yes, how can I help you? You seem to be in some problem, or you seem to be having some issue with this particular filling up the examination form. Can I help you? So warmth is something that shows that the person is ready to help you, and the person is ready to listen to you, and so that should be the, the the counselor should have these qualities. He should be warm. He should have warmth in his attitude, in his behavior, in his contact with the learners. Whenever the learners gets into in contact with the counselor, he should always be ready to receive the queries. He should appreciate and he should empathize with the learners. But at the same time, very categorically, clearly, he should also express that this is the fact, this can be done, this cannot be done. Second part is acceptance. This is very important. Uh, Most of the time in the conventional education, teachers do not accept whether the learner is also having some knowledge. But if you talk about the distance education, you see, the learner has a lot of uh, sources of information, and he or she is sometimes very well informed. So we, as a counselor, it is not an ideal attitude that he should always brush off. But instead, he can say, "Yes, of course, you are right." But the fact is this, because learner might be having truncated knowledge about certain issues, but he's not supposed to be rebuffed, simply brushed off, simply put aside, and then rejected altogether. So that means there has to be a level of acceptance in the learner. The counselor should accept the learner, his views, and then come out with the correct information. He can say, yes, you are right, but recently there is an amendment in this particular topic. So now it has been clarified as this. Similarly, we know that the data gets updated quite often, and sometimes the learners, particularly in the management, trade and commerce, in the share market, in certain other areas of BCom and MCom, the data is updated every 6 months, every budget year, and like that. So there are different implications of these changes. It is the duty of the counselor to inform the learners about such changes. But they should not outrightly reject and tell the learners, oh, well, you fool, you know nothing about the commerce. You don't know even this. Sometimes we use the metaphor. You don't know even this. So that is not good attitude. That is not becoming of a ODL teacher. So the ODL teacher should accept and then also advise and inform. So there has to be quality of acceptance. They should be genuine, and as I said previously, empathy. There should be a good level of empathy, empathizing attitude, whereby learner shows oneness with the problem of the learners. So counselor must say that I am not from some other planet. He is from this very planet. So the teacher might also be in certain difficulties, but then as his role, his assignment demands, he knows how to handle his personal matters, and at the same time, he has been oriented to help the learner to make him or her enable, strengthen them with the ability to address their issues. So he should have sense of empathy. Empathy means ability to sense the feelings and experience of the second person. So that means empathetic counselor is one who is able to come into terms with the concerns, with the problems of the second person. That means the learner. So if a teacher is able to have a sense of acceptance, sense of appreciation to the concerns or issues raised by the learner, that means he has a sense of empathy. So these are certain qualities. Then there are certain skills. What are the skills? Skills means those techniques with which one can discharge his or her assignment effectively. So what are the skills? Skills में सबसे पहले आता है listening. सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट जो पहलू है कि अगर हम किसी की बात को खुले मन से सुन लें तो जो बोलने वाला है उसकी आधी समस्या तो वहीं दूर हो जाती है. Most often we have lot to discuss with the doctors, but once we are with the doctor he, he behaves in such a way that we forget half of those issues that we had thought to discuss with the doctor. How does that happen? Because the doctor has such an empathetic attitude, accept level of acceptance that we just come into terms. No, we are here with the best person. Perhaps he knows everything by himself, but it doesn't happen with a person who is not empathetic to you. So the very first one, the doctor will simply say, "Yes, tell me what is your problem." And if the person accompanying the patient tries to explain, the doctor will politely say, "No, no, you just sit down. I'm asking him." That means the patient. The patient is not able to make sense through his speech and words. Yet the doctor is very patient. He listens to that spoken text, spoken words, and then he constructs his own conclusion. And then maybe after a while, when the doctor is sure that he has extracted the necessary information from the patient, then he will ask the attendant, "Okay, how many times did he eat?" Because it is possible that the patient might not remember the time, the number of eating things, and so forth. But with regard to problem, the doctor will always prefer to listen to about the problem from the mouth of the patient. So that means it is the skill which is the listening skill. So a very good counselor is a very good listener. We can conclude. So a good counselor is a good listener. Another quality of the counselor is good counselor is the open-ended questions. What do you mean by open-ended questions? We should not put closed questions. No, open-ended. वी कैन से अच्छा आप बताएं आपने पिछले 24 घंटे में क्या क्या खाया, ठीक है। अगर इसके अलावा किसी स्टूडेंट से ये पूछा जाए कि आपने ब्रिटिश काल का इतिहास तो पढ़ रखा होगा, तो बताइए उसकी महत्वपूर्ण घटनाएं कौन कौन सी हैं। तो ब्रिटिश काल का इतिहास, तो अब आप ब्रिटिश काल के बाहर नहीं जा सकते हैं। लेकिन अगर ये प्रश्न पूछा जाए कि भारत के इतिहास के बारे में कुछ महत्वपूर्ण बातें बताइए, तो ये बड़ा ओपन एंडेड क्वेश्चन है। इसमें आरंभिक काल, मध्यकाल, आधुनिक काल और स्वातंत्र्योत्तर काल, पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस एरा, ब्रिटिश एरा, मुगल एरा, देन द अर्ली पीरियड, किसी को भी आप टच कर सकते हैं। लेकिन अगर आप ये कहें कि भोजन में तीखेपन का एहसास केवल लाल मिर्च से होता है, तो ये क्लोज एंडेड क्वेश्चन है। अब आप यस और नो ही कह सकते हैं होता है या नहीं होता है। लेकिन अगर आप ये कहें कि भोजन को तीखा बनाने के लिए बहुत सारे विकल्प हमारे सामने हैं, जरा बताइए, तो कोई ये कह सकता है कि काली मिर्च भी इसमें योगदान कर सकती है, लाल मिर्च भी कर सकती है, मसाले भी कर सकते हैं, या कुछ और इंग्रेडिएंट भी आप डाल सकते हैं। तो मेरा कहने का जो आशय ये है कि जो अच्छा काउंसलर है वो क्लोज एंडेड क्वेश्चन पूछने के बजाय ओपन एंडेड क्वेश्चन पूछता है, जिससे एक लंबी चौड़ी और विस्तृत जानकारी उसके पास आ जाती है। ये बात ठीक है कि इसमें समय लगता है और उस सूचना की प्रोसेसिंग करने की आवश्यकता होगी, लेकिन व्यापक और सघन जानकारी के लिए यह आवश्यक है। So a good counselor will put the open-ended question, then acknowledgement. What is acknowledgement? That means the good counselor will always, reflect. He will say, "Oh yeah, thank you very much. You have spoken about your issues in detail. So I really appreciate it. Let us now discuss and find out certain solutions." So the sense of acknowledgement, even if it is a student learner, I think he is an individual. As an individual, he has a certain right to his dignity. So we must not forget. We must not think that the learner, the counselor should not think that he is simply learner, my learner. He should think that so and so is an individual. He is a respectable member of the society. Therefore, I must acknowledge his contribution, his sparing the time, coming to me, discussing the problem, and so forth. So, a lot of things happen, and sometimes listening is one art, and then maintaining silence is another art. That means you allow the learner to speak whatever she has in her or in his mind. So, if you allow that to happen, see, a lot of problems are solved because the learner sometimes come with a lot of problems, and then they start behaving in eccentric manner, in arrogance, in agitated voice. But if the counselor is slightly diligent, then he or she will maintain silence for a few seconds and then come back with the appropriate or apt reply. So all these qualities are there with the good counselor. Then structuring. What is structuring? That means when he or she inform the learner, advise the learner, it should be in a structure. That means first of all, the teacher should explain why this counseling session is there. Then he should tell we are going to discuss this particular aspect. Then finally he should conclude by saying that yes, even though we have discussed it, but there are certain references, there are certain persons. If you want further information, you can contact. So you should structure your information in such a way that it looks scientifically built to the learner and it serves the interest of the learner. So there are any number of qualities, any number of traits of a good counselor. Obviously, a lot will be learned if there is a practical session. I mean, if our learners will ask questions, then they can judge as to how, with what technique, what approach, what attitude, what perception I reply or respond to their queries. So it is very important that a good counselor has these good qualities. Another important aspect has been added to the counseling more recently, and this is the integration of the technology. So these days there are a lot of information sources, and the information is available in small capsules, small chunks, which can be downloaded, which can be for audio interaction, those can be accessed, and so forth. So that is about the counseling. So we still have time to discuss what is tutoring, because if some of our learners are not able to attend the session, perhaps if they so desire, then they can listen back to it. We come to the next issue, that is about the tutor or tutoring. So we are always in sense of lighter vein sense, we say he or she is tutoring him to speak or behave in a particular manner. That means he or she is, in a way teaching, in a way advising, in a way informing somebody to behave in certain manner. So teaching, tutoring is also a form of teaching. So that means if someone is informing, advising, and counseling in such a way that the learner who is being tutored, who is being taught, who is being counseled, inculcates the teachings and then develop certain qualities. So there is a classification of the tutoring. So, tutor is basically a person who teaches. Tutor is a person who teaches. So in a kind of it is a teacher who teaches in the distance education, not the conventional students. That means in every day in a classroom four-wall situation. So what a counselor does, he or she, as we have already discussed, he does the same thing as that of counselor. He advises, and most often there is a slight difference between counselor and the teacher. Counselor is one who inform, advise, and counsel, but a tutor is one who largely focus on the content matter, subject matter, on the contents. So that means is more of academic nature person, or academic person with academic assignment responsibilities, rather than a person like counselor who has to advise in all personal or non-personal, on academic or non-academic, on all sorts of matters. But a tutor is supposed to discuss only those issues which relates to your subject matter, which relates to the operation of the subject of your program, and also which has implications on as to how to complete the studies by the learner. So we know that we are also aware with the word coaching. So basically, if we say someone, if we say Rakesh is receiving coaching for preparation of JEE, Joint Engineering Examination Test. So that means he or she is taking the information advice for the examination, JEE examination. But at the same time, he or she is not taking help for submission of examination form. So if you look at this particular aspects, that we call, he or she is taking coaching at the coaching center. So we don't call tuition center. Sometimes we used to say tuition center, but we say coaching center. So who is at the coaching center? There are tutors, there are teachers. So tutoring and coaching, to some extent, it has little distinction, but largely the responsibilities are similar with the tutor and the coach. But let me explain to you here briefly that if we relate the word coach to the sports, then there is a different assignment. So the coach, hockey coach, football coach, there is also the word coach is used, but there it is a different type of activity that the coach does. There it is imparting the skills, but in tutoring it is to deal with the subject matter of the respective course in which the learners are enrolled. So in a way, it is basically providing remedial help, providing information about additional information about the course where there is a study material, and if the additional support is provided, that means you are getting the coaching. If we are, say, some students are conventionally studying in school or colleges, but in the evening they are going to coaching classes. So that means they are receiving additional help. So coaching is basically additional help. Tutoring is also additional help, but there can be tutor in the regular classrooms. But if you go to centers which provide additional help, perhaps you might not call them tutors, you will be calling them coaches. So there is interrelationship between tutor and the coach, or tutoring and the coaching. So it is basically a supplemental academic help to the learners. So a lot of activity which are done by the tutors or the coaches. They take care of the academic contents. They provide academic assistance. They provide administrative assistance. They provide the services which are required for completion of a program by the learner. So it is not that they will simply ignore the issue with regard to admissions, which is otherwise an administrative issue. So, along with the academic matters, the tutors and the counselors, just like coaches and counselors, the tutors will also help the learners to address the issue by providing to them the information, the advice, and the counseling. So, all this is happening with the tutors also. Now, there are certain traits of a good tutor. So, we know that a good tutor is also is like a good counselor. First of all, it is important that your teacher is the subject expert. He or she is the subject expert. So, if he or she holds complete command over the subject, then he or she can give better information, can advise better, can counsel better. Second thing is, a good tutor will always encourages the questions. So that means he will not stop anybody from asking questions. And this, in fact, is that his attitude, how he is, whether he is empathetic, as we studied, whether he is accepting, or there is an acceptance in his behavior, or there is an empathy, or there is listening. So a good tutor must also listen, accept, and allow more and more questions by the learners. So primarily he is there to help. So he is a catalyst in bringing about fulfillment of the program or the course with his or her tutoring. So if you look at the types of tutoring, there are three types of tutors or tutoring. So first of all is the peer tutoring. What is peer tutoring? Peer tutoring is tutoring, or rather one should say the teaching learning exercise which is carried out by the members of a group in which you are also one member. So that means there's a one-to-one sort of teaching process that e- each one of the group is targeted for teaching or information or learning. So that means there are members of the group and then they individually teach the members individually. That means it is not like 10 people are sitting and then there is one presentation on the board. It is not peer teaching. Peer tutoring is when member of a group will take one individual learner and then address his or her concerns. Second one is the cross-age tutoring. Cross-age tutoring is tutoring where you have learner or tutors not of the prescribed age as may be done by the institutions in the conventional mode. There might be learners who might be older than the teacher, or there might be a case where teachers will be older than the learners. So it is a cross age teaching system where senior students will be getting tutored by the younger teachers also. The third one is parent adult volunteer tutoring. Sometimes some parents, some volunteers also volunteer, volunteer means also propose themselves to take the tuitioning act or the tutor's job to help certain learners in which he or she is competent enough. We have seen that there are senior citizens who are very well experienced in certain areas of knowledge and then they volunteer themselves. So such volunteer could be few parents and then those parents along with their own children, sometimes not their own children but other students, they will accept. They might even bring or welcome them at their own places and then arrange tutoring for them. So that also happen. So especially tutoring in a distance education makes a lot of impact because in the conventional mode the learner knows what are the attitudes, what are the privileges of the conventional educational setup. There's a teacher, there are resources, there's a library, there is a system. He, she can approach anytime, every day, 365 an year. But for distance learners, this advantage is not with them. They have teachers at remotely located. They just have privileges, few opportunities to meet the teacher. So if the teacher acts as a good counselor, as a good tutor, it definitely encourages the learner to continue his or her own learning. So I think if we talk briefly or conclusively, then we know that counseling is slightly broader in its role, whereby tutoring is more restricted in its approach. That means it is primarily rendering an academic help to the student, whereas counseling is a system of help which is more broader in its approach. It may be dealing with the academic contents, administrative contents, personal advising, and what not with the counselor. So this is all about counseling and tutoring. I think we could have discussed the next issue. So we will talk about the GNU model of the counselors and tutors. So it is very important initiative of the Indira Gandhi National Open University to have a large panel of counselors, and those counselors are chosen from the respective disciplines where they are teachers in the higher education, and a panel is drawn. And more importantly, these counselors are provided proper orientation, proper training. They are acquainted with the overview of the distance education. Then they are also apprised as to how to operate the study material that IGNOU develops. And there are orientation programs, there are refresher courses, which are quite often organized by the university to update the teachers who are working as counselors for the open and distance learners of the university. So, the purpose to discuss this particular aspect is that there is greater need to train the teachers, the those who are assigned with the role of counselors, or the teachers who are assigned with the role of the tutors, because it has to be clearly understood that counseling and tutoring is not that way, quote unquote, teaching. Reason being that there is not enough time to teach each and every unit, every chapter like conventional teaching. And moreover, distance learners are individual learners, autonomous learners, they are mobile learners. So they have a lot of prior knowledge. So this prior knowledge must be given opportunity to be integrated with the present studies. So if we would like to work that way to acknowledge their prior learning, then there has to be room for learners to express, and then there has a role with the counselors to accept his or her prior learning and then build further learning on that basis. So, with keeping in view the characteristics of the distance learners, it is very, very important that counselors or tutors are, I mean, those people, those academics are assigned the role of counselors or tutors who are well versed in the open and distance learning philosophy. They know the system working, they know how the study material or the self learning material is prepared, how it is operated, what are the backgrounds of the distance learners, their characteristics, their behavior, their issues, their concerns. Only then the academics, those who are chosen as counselors, will be able to work effectively and objectively. And that will definitely help to achieve the mission, the goal, the target of the university which has been there. So, in conclusion, we can say that as a student support service, the counseling and tutoring are two very important services which are available for the learners. So previously, today we also discussed last chapter of block 2, which was the problem solving, where specifically we elaborated what should be the attitude for solving a problem, how it should be responded to, what are the traits that has to be there to avoid anxiety, avoid the health related implications, but yet manage the time, manage the stress. So problem solving, there are 100 and 1000 problems, but each problem has a cause, has a root. So if we can uh, understand the relationship between the cause and effect, definitely we know there's a problem, there is solution. So this the intermittent gap can create anxiety, can create stress. But if we look at it objectively, we can definitely find out the solutions. So, dear learners, with this we end our discussion on problem solving in the distance learning and counseling and tutoring in the distance learning. So tomorrow we will go to our next chapter, and then we will discuss particularly media and technology and organizing counseling and tutoring services. So we will discuss media and technology, how it is helping us to reach better the distance learners, and from institution point of view, how the counseling and tutoring services are arranged, so how they are financed, how they are planned, they are executed, and so forth. So what goes into a systemic approach towards completing these activities. So with that, I conclude and say goodbye to all of you. Hope you will have a very good day today, and then we expect to meet you tomorrow morning at 11. So please do uh, join at 11 so that we can discuss more deeply, more exhaustively the topics that we have slated for tomorrow. Have a good day. Thank you very much.